Welcome to Reset Revolution. My name is Justina, and today I'm joined by Emma, and we're going to be talking about feminism in art and using art to combat period stigma. So, could you start by introducing yourself?
Yeah, so I'm Emma. My name is Emma Will. I use she, her pronouns. From Connecticut, and I'm going to Cornell University. I'm a freshman.
All right, great. So, could you start by talking a bit about what sparked your interest in using art to fight period stigma?
Yeah, so about like 2 years ago, I went to this like leadership institute at Brown, and we had this activity called like action plans, where we had to create an action plan to change our schools or communities for the better. And while brainstorming, I had a few ideas. One was to make my school's health curriculum more inclusive. Another one was this one to like raise awareness for like about period stigma, and that kind of like was a little bit fuzzy. I wasn't really sure what I was going to do with that, so I ended up choosing the other one. But I kept this one in the back of my mind, and then after like the program was over, I ended up starting this like just on my own because I was taking an art class where I got to like do whatever I wanted. Basically, I just had to produce work, and this ended up being the theme for my concentration. I went to an all-girls school, and yet I still felt like people were ashamed of their periods and like hiding it. People would be smuggling tampons into the bathroom like they were drugs, and that kind of bothered me. I was like, why are we like? There's no point in doing this. We shouldn't feel ashamed about our bodies.
Yeah.
And so I decided like by pointing it out more and like making people think of it more, I could start like combating that stigma. And so that's what I did. I did it through art.
That's great.
Yeah.
That sounds, yeah, I feel like it's such a topic that is just ignored and no attention is brought to it. So it's great that you're doing this like completely unique, way of activism. So you've already talked about about like what sparked your interest, but now could you talk a bit about what exactly you've done with your concentration on period stigma?
Yeah. So my concentration basically is a bunch of things. Specifically, I've worked a lot on like focusing on gender.
Mm-hmm.
I use like my creative abilities to shed light on the way that society treats the topic of menstruation, um, particularly for cisgender women. But I also included a lot of pieces that had to do with trans men or non-binary folks. Um, just kind of like keeping aware that we're not all menstruators are cisgender women. Um, yeah, because like if we will never be able to live in a gender like equitable society if we do not dismantle the shame that has been associated with menstruation
Mm-hmm.
for so long and has been embedded into our legislature and social norms. So with this concentration, I primarily focused on my school because that's more feasible. But I also have a website and an Instagram, and so like I guess it's also like trying to like spread awareness everywhere,
Mm-hmm.
um, and also like raise awareness about like how expensive it is to purchase menstrual hygiene products. So I have one piece called Monthly Roses where I wrapped tampons in dollar bills and dyed them in red ink and then put them together in like a vase and then photoshopped flowers like roses onto them.
Wow.
Um, and I have another piece where I put together a bunch of those like little not wrappers, but like whenever you take off a pad they have like that little thing, like square thing that keeps the wings from going
Mhm.
apart. Um, I cut up a bunch of those into the shape of butterflies and attached them, and then spray painted dollar signs on them. There were like
Oh,
probably
yeah,
like
I think I
500
saw that
of
one,
them.
yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So I have like a bunch of little like mini concentrations within the big one. Um, and yeah,
Yeah, like what you were saying about the shame associated with menstruation, it's so true, but it also has effects like the fact that there's so much shame surrounding it means that people don't talk about it and people in government don't shed any light on it, which leads to like the products continue being expensive, which leads to period poverty. It's this whole cycle that is continued because of all the shame.
exactly.
Yeah. And so what are some of the other ways that feminism can be shown through art, in your opinion?
Um, I feel like feminism and art can go together, like basically in any way you want it. So I obviously chose to do this concentration as like period stigma, but there's been plenty of other people who have like chosen a different route. Just by like having, I feel like having a name obviously like helps better your cause and like helps you become like more successful, or that concentration become more successful, and like well known. But I've also seen like art where people paint their like stretch marks different colors and like photograph those to show that like it's okay to love your body. There's That's just one example. There's so many ways in which art and feminism can intersect. Um, and yeah,
Yeah. So, lastly, how do you think that your activism, like your art and your Instagram and your website, all the things you've done, how do they think that how do you think that they've impacted people?
okay, so I definitely accomplished my goal of combating like the stigma at my school. Obviously, it'll never be 100%, but a lot of people started talking more about it
Mhm.
after I like did my concentration, and people saw me in the halls working on it, and then saw like the works of art in shows for like my school. Um, and I just like heard people talking about it more, like in the hallways in my classes. People would be like swapping like tips about how to deal with their periods, or like debating like menstrual cups versus menstrual discs, and it became a lot more like regular to no pun intended to talk about periods.
Mhm. Yeah, well, it's great that you've been able to have such like a real impact on your school. That's a really amazing thing. Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing your story and like talking about this. It's really important issue to talk about. So thank you so much for participating in this.
Thank you for having me.